Standard Mandarin Chinese pronunciation. Standard Mandarin Chinese pronunciation. In this presentation, after a brief introduction to Standard Mandarin Chinese, we'll talk in detail about Pinyin, specifically about tones, initials, finals, and a few other useful rules for beginners. China is home to many ethnic groups, each with its own distinct languages and dialects. To facilitate nationwide communication, Standard Mandarin Chinese, known as Putonghua, was established and standardized in 1950s as the country's official language. Primarily based on the Beijing dialect, it is often referred to as common speech. Today, Putonghua is the form of Chinese taught in schools and used widely across the nation. The language system is built on three core components: characters for writing, pinyin for pronunciation, and tones for meaning. Pinyin is the primary practical guide for learners, and tones are an integral part of its phonetic representation. The International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, a precise scientific system for representing speech sounds, serves as a specialized reference. It can be consulted for detailed phonetic clarification of specific pinyin sounds, but is not a core learning component. Now let's talk about pinyin. So, Chinese language pinyin, Hanyu pinyin. Pinyin is a phonetic system invented in the 1950s that uses the Roman Latin ABC's alphabet to represent the sounds of the Standard Mandarin Chinese spoken language. It's not a language itself. It serves as a bridge for learners to understand the pronunciation of Chinese characters and for typing Chinese on computers and mobile devices. Every pinyin syllable consists of three components: an initial, a consonant, a final, which includes a main vowel, and a tone. The initial can be absent, a configuration known as a zero initial. The structure of a final can be defined by the following formula. Final equals medial plus nucleus plus coda or ending, where the medial glide is optional and represented by the letters I, U, U. The main vowel is required and represented by letters A, U, I, O, U, U, and a special final The coda or ending is optional and can be represented by the vowel of glide I, U. Note: the letter O in AO and IAO finals marks the U of glide. The coda or ending can also be represented by nasal consonants N, G. The structure of a pinyin syllable can be visualized as follows: initial, final, tone. There are 21 plus 2 special consonants which can be initial, 6 simple finals, 29 compound finals plus 1 special final, as well as 4 tones plus neutral tone. There are approximately 1200 possible sound combinations in Chinese language pinyin, but only about 400 of them are commonly used. Tones. A tone is the pitch pattern applied to a whole syllable. The tone mark is always written over the main vowel of the final, following this order of priority: A, O, U, I, U, U. Note: for the final IU, contracted from iong, the mark appears on the U. There are 4 main tones plus a neutral tone in Mandarin Chinese. The first tone is high, steady, flat, like saying ah at the doctor's office. The second tone is rising, like saying what in confusion or surprise. The third tone is falling, rising. The voice pitch should be kept as low as possible, like saying an enthusiastic yeah, as if forced to agree with something. The fourth tone is falling. It is an angry or commanding tone, like saying an angry stop. The fifth neutral tone is short, light and weak. It is almost mumbled, like saying the unstressed in the phrase a cup of tea. In some cases, tones change in speaking. When a disyllabic word contains two third tones, the first one automatically becomes a second tone in speech. For example, ni hao becomes ni hao. Ni hao is considered one disyllabic word in Chinese, a single lexical unit meaning hello, even though it is written with two characters. When bu is followed by a syllable in the first tone, it changes into the second tone, bu. For example, bu dui becomes bu dui. In natural, connected speech, a third tone loses its final rise and is pronounced as a low falling tone when it occurs mid-phrase. For example, woman becomes woman. Here the tone mark is not standard pinyin. It is used to represent the low, flat falling pitch, low fall. Initials. Mandarin has only 4 voiced initials: M, N, L, R. All other initials are voiceless. So, aspiration is the most important feature for distinguishing between similar consonant pairs, like b, p, d, t, j, q, zh, ch, z, c. Initials M, F, N, L, S are identical or nearly identical to English letters. For example, ma, fan, ni, li, san. Initials ya, wa are very similar to English. Initial ya before a or u functions as the consonant glide i. For example, ya, you, yu. Before i alone, a light ear glide often occurs naturally at the beginning of i. Initial wa before a o functions as the consonant glide o. For example, wa, wo. Before u alone, a light w glide often occurs naturally at the beginning of u. Think of the pinyin ya and wa before i or u like the apostrophe in English contractions. For example, I'm. Just as the apostrophe doesn't change the pronunciation, but clearly marks a word boundary, ya in yi and wa in u signal that the syllable starts with the vowel sound i and u, without adding a consonant sound. They are spelling markers, not part of the pronunciation in these cases. Initials b, p, d, t, g, k are different from English in aspiration and voicing. Initials b, d, k are unaspirated. For example, ba, da, g. Initials p, t, k are strongly aspirated. For example, pao, ta, kai. Initial h is different from English, but both are fricative, made by a turbulent airflow. Sound is formed by raising the back of the tongue close to the soft palate, creating friction as air flows through the narrow passage. While the sound h in English is a light throat sound made with a relaxed tongue. For example, how. The last three groups of initials are different from English. The first one is alveolo-palatal sounds. They are produced with the tongue flat and forward against the hard palate. Lips are unrounded and often spread slightly, as in a faint smile. G, G, Sh. Initial G is unaspirated, for example, ja. Initial Ch is strongly aspirated, for example, chu. Initial Sh is unaspirated, for example, xia. The next group is retroflex sounds. They are produced with the tongue tip curled back towards the hard palate. The lips are generally relaxed or slightly rounded, not spread. Zh, ch, sh, r. The initial zh is unaspirated, for example, zh. Initial ch is strongly aspirated, for example, ch. Initial sh is unaspirated, for example, sh. Initial is not like the English r. It is a completely different sound. Its sound is similar to the friction at the end of zh, ch, sh. For example, ren. The next group is dental sounds. They are produced with the tongue tip touching the back of the upper front teeth. The lips are neutral or slightly spread, not rounded. Z, z. Initial z is unaspirated, for example, z. Initial z is strongly aspirated, for example, tong. Finals. Simple finals a, o, e, i, u, ü. Final a gives sound a, for example, ma. O gives sound o, for example, wo. Final gives sound for example, o, r. O schwa sound in natural tone syllables, for example, d. Final e pronounced as e after most consonants and in e, for example, ni or e. Note: e is not pronounced as e after zh, ch, sh, r, z, c, s. For example, shi, zhi, zi, ci. Simple final u is pronounced as u, for example, bu, lu. But in rapid speech it can be u, slightly more relaxed. Simple final ü is pronounced as ü, for example, qu, ü. Note: after the initials ji, qi, shi, ya, the letter ü is written without the dots as u. You can use different memory phrases to remember these four letters. For example, Jack and Queen said an Xbox to you. Compound finals. Pinyin spelling rules for syllables with no initial. Rule number 1. Replace the leading vowel with ya, wa. The letter ya represents a light u glide, wa represents a light w glide. This reflects the natural transition into the vowel sound. For example, I, ya, ien, yong, yao, ye, yo, yung, wu, wa, wo, wai, wei, wan, wang, weng. Rule number 2. Put ya, wa in front. The letter ya and wa are spelling markers. They do not add a separate consonant sound but indicate the syllable begins with the vowel I or U. Add y in the front. For example, I, in, ing. Add wa in the front. For example, u, ueng. There are 6 simple finals: a, o, e, i, u, ü, and their combination of 2 or 3 letters make compound finals. And there are 13 compound finals in standard Mandarin Chinese: I, a, ao, o, ya, ye, yao, you, wa, wo, wai, wei, yue. Nasal compound finals. There are 2 nasal ending n and ng. Their combination with simple finals or with compound finals make nasal compound finals. And there are 16 nasal compound finals in Mandarin Chinese. It's ang, en, eng, in, ing, yen, yang, yung, wen, wan, wang, wen, ueng. Special case R. R is pronounced as in American English butter, but shorter and more tense. R. The tongue starts in the central position and immediately curls back. For example, As a suffix, it changes the quality of the main final by adding retroflexion. For example, jur. In Erhua, when R is a suffix, the final N is dropped. For example, war. The next chapter is for practicing a bit more in pronunciation of letters A, O, E, U, Ü in compound finals. Letter R pronounced as A in ya, wa, ai, yan. For example, jia, hua, ai, xiang, yang. It's pronounced as O in, like in English, hot. Shang, shao. It's pronounced as A in yan, yan. For example, tian, yuan. Letter O is pronounced as O in O. For example, ho, like O in O. For example, guo, like U in ao, yao. Note, here letter O represents U, but is not a spelling convention. For example, gao, xiao. Letter E in compound final N is pronounced as E. For example, neng. But in rapid speech in N and Ng, it can be pronounced as schwa. Hen, neng. In ye, yue, it's pronounced as ye, xie, yue. In it's pronounced as for example, jur. In A, it's pronounced as in diphthong ei, hui. Letter E is pronounced as E in I, A, for example, hey. Letter U in final ung and in rapid speech in final O is pronounced as U. It is slightly more relaxed. Zhong. Letter U acts as medial glide at the start of a final consonant glide. In wa, wo, wai, wei, wan, un, wang. For example, gua, guo, guai, gui, wei, guang, gun, un, guang. Letter U. After the initials T, Shi, Ya, the letter U is written without the dots as U. As was told before, you can use different memory phrases to remember these four letters. For example, Jack and Queen sent an Xbox to you. For example, Jue, Xue. U as a medial glide in Yuan, Ye, Yun. For example, Yuan, Yue, Yun. Other rules. Neutral tone syllables. Vowel reduction to schwa sound In fast speech, the vowel in a neutral tone syllable changes to a short central schwa sound as in mama, mam, penyo, penyo. Pinyin apostrophe. Preventing misreading in syllables. In pinyin, an apostrophe is required between syllables to prevent misreading whenever the second syllable begins with the letter A, O, or U. For example, tian apostrophe and men, nu apostrophe her. Thank you for your attention.